I'm 79 years old now, and I still can't swim in the ocean. Can't even look at it for too long without feeling my chest tighten up. My grandkids don't understand why Grandpa won't go to the beach with them, why I get quiet around the 4th of July, why some mornings they find me sitting in the dark at 4 a.m. just staring at nothing. My wife knew. She's gone now. Been gone 6 years, and she took most of my reasons for keeping quiet with her. So I'm going to tell you what happened on June 6th, 1944, when I was 19 years old and thought I understood what courage meant. My name's Frank Delaney. I was a private first class with Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment, 29th Infantry Division. We called ourselves the Blue and Grey because half of us were National Guard boys from Virginia and Maryland. I grew up in Bedford, Virginia, population maybe 3,000. Small town where everybody knew everybody. By the end of that day, Bedford lost more boys per capita than any other town in America. I was one of the few who made it past the Seawall. Only 3 of us from my boat. Out of 32 men, they loaded us onto the HMS Empire Javelin on June 1st. We knew something big was coming, but they didn't tell us where until we were already at sea. The crossing was rough. The English Channel in early June isn't kind to men who've never been on a ship before. Most of us were farm boys, coal miners, guys who'd never seen the ocean before we enlisted. I threw up so many times I stopped counting. Captain Taylor Fellers walked through the hold trying to keep spirits up, but you could see it in his eyes too. He knew what was waiting for us. The night before, they gave us a hot meal, steak and potatoes. That should have told us something right there. The Army doesn't feed you steak unless they think it might be your last meal. Lieutenant Ray Nance gathered us together and went over the plan one more time. We were assigned to Boat 5. Our objective was Dog Green Sector, right in front of a little beach exit they called D1. According to intelligence, there was a draw there, a natural valley cut into the bluffs that led inland. Take that draw, clear the German positions, push inland. Simple, clean. That's what they told us. What they didn't tell us was that the Germans had spent 4 years turning that beach into a killing ground. They had it pre-sighted with every weapon they owned. Machine guns, mortars, 80mm artillery, everything positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. And the Navy bombardment that was supposed to soften them up. Most of those shells landed too far inland or fell short into the water. When we came in, those bunkers were still fully operational. I remember the sound of the Higgins boat engine, that deep rumble that you felt in your bones. We'd loaded onto the LCVP at 5:30 hours, still dark, the water choppy as hell. 32 of us packed in there like sardines, each man carrying about 65 pounds of gear. I had my M1 Garand, 8 clips of ammunition, 2 bandoliers, 4 grenades, entrenching tool, gas mask, rations, canteen, first aid kit. My pack alone weighed 40 pounds. We were so weighted down that if you fell in deep water, you'd go straight to the bottom. Bedford boys made up most of Boat 5. There was Roy Stevens, the centre on our high school football team, John Reynolds, who worked at his dad's drugstore, Raymond Hoback, whose brother was in Boat 4 just ahead of us. We'd grown up together, gone to the same church, dated the same girls. Now we were sitting in that boat, water spraying over the ramp, trying not to think about what was coming. The Navy coxswain driving our boat was just a kid himself, maybe 20. He kept the throttle steady as we circled, waiting for the signal to head in. Around us, the whole invasion fleet stretched out as far as you could see. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, all firing at the shore. The noise was unbelievable. Constant thunder that made your ears ring. I thought surely nothing could survive that bombardment. I was wrong about a lot of things that day. At 06:30 hours, we got the order. The coxswain turned us toward shore and opened up the throttle. That's when I got my first good look at Omaha Beach. The bluffs rose up maybe 150 feet, covered in thick grass and scrub. At the base was a seawall, maybe 4 feet high in most places, 10 feet in others. Between us and that seawall was about 300 yards of beach, dotted with obstacles. Czech hedgehogs, Belgian gates, wooden stakes with mines attached. And beyond all that, I could see the bunkers, concrete fortifications with narrow firing slits, positioned to sweep the entire beach. The closer we got, the more I could see the other boats. Some were already at the shore. I saw one take a direct hit from an 88, just disappeared in a cloud of smoke and spray. Bodies flew into the air. Another boat's ramp dropped, and I watched the machine gun fire cut through the men before they even got off. The water around them turned red. Sergeant John Wilkes was standing near the front of our boat. Big guy, coal miner from West Virginia, been in the National Guard for 10 years. He was yelling something, but I couldn't hear him over the noise. The boat was bouncing so hard, I had to hold onto the gunwale to stay upright. Water was coming over the sides, soaking us. My hands were shaking. I kept telling myself it was just the cold water, but I knew better. We were maybe 50 yards out when I heard it. The sound I'll never forget as long as I live. The MG-42. The Germans called it the Maschinengewehr 42, but we called it Hitler's buzzsaw because of the sound it made. 1,200 rounds per minute. So fast it didn't sound like individual shots, just one continuous ripping noise. And they had multiple guns firing at us. The coxswain was screaming something about a sandbar. We'd hit it about 70 yards from shore, much further out than we were supposed to land. He tried to back off, get us closer, but the boat was taking fire. I heard metal pinging against the steel ramp. Then I heard something else, a wet, heavy sound. The man next to me, Jack Ingram, jerked backward. When I looked at him, half his face was gone. That's when Lieutenant Nance made the decision. He yelled for the coxswain to drop the ramp, said we had to get off the boat before we all died in it. The coxswain looked terrified, but he hit the release. The ramp fell forward, and the ocean and the fire rushed in at the same time. The first 6 men who went out that ramp never had a chance. The machine gun fire was so concentrated, so precise, they were cut down before they hit the water. I saw Sergeant Wilkes take 3 rounds to the chest. He fell forward and disappeared under the surf. The men behind him tried to push to the sides, jump over the gunwales, anything to avoid going straight out into that field of fire. I went over the left side, jumped as far as I could, hit the water, and went under. The weight of my gear pulled me down like an anchor. I was in over my head, couldn't touch bottom, couldn't see anything but dark water and bubbles. My boots hit something, maybe a submerged obstacle, and I pushed off hard. Got my head above water long enough to take a breath, before another wave knocked me back under. When I came up the second time, I was in shallower water, maybe 4 feet deep. I could touch bottom, but the current was strong, and the weight of my pack kept pulling me backward. All around me I could hear screaming, explosions, the constant buzz of machine gun fire. The water was full of bodies and pieces of equipment. I saw a medic floating face down, his aid bag still strapped to his back. I saw a flamethrower tank that had been hit, fuel burning on top of the water. I started wading toward shore. Each step felt like it took an hour. The water grabbed at my legs. The weight of my gear fought every movement, and bullets were hitting the water all around me. I saw the splashes before I heard the shots, little geysers of water erupting in lines as the machine gunner swept his fire back and forth. I watched Roy Stevens get hit. He was maybe 10 feet to my right. The bullet took him in the throat, and he went down without a sound. There were bodies everywhere, some floating, some half submerged, some caught on the obstacles. I tried not to look at their faces, but I couldn't help it. These were boys I'd known my whole life. I stepped on something soft and yielded under the water, and I knew it was someone's body, but I couldn't stop, couldn't look down, just had to keep moving. A mortar round hit about 20 yards to my left. The explosion threw water and sand 30 feet in the air. Shrapnel hissed through the air around me. Something hot grazed my helmet, spun it halfway around on my head. I kept going. The water was getting shallower. I was moving through the obstacles now, the Czech hedgehogs and wooden stakes. Some of them had mines attached. I saw a man brush against one and the explosion tore him apart. I made it to waist-deep water when I saw Raymond Hoback ahead of me. He was struggling with his pack, trying to get it off. I yelled at him to leave it, but he couldn't hear me. Then I saw why he was struggling. His pack had been hit by shrapnel and was on fire. The smoke and flames were spreading to his uniform. He was trying to rip it off, but his hands were shaking too badly to work the straps. I reached him, grabbed at the buckles, got one undone before the machine gun found us. The rounds stitched across the water between us. I felt something tug at my left shoulder, hot and sharp. Raymond's eyes went wide. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Blood poured from his chest. His knees buckled, and he fell forward into the water. I tried to grab him, but he was already gone, sinking beneath the red-stained surf. I don't remember deciding to leave him. I don't remember making the choice to save myself instead of pulling him out, but I did. I turned toward shore and kept moving. The water was knee-deep now. The machine gun fire was constant. I could see the muzzle flashes from the bunkers, multiple guns all firing at once. Tracer rounds drew red lines through the air. Men were falling all around me. Some were hit and went down hard. Others just seemed to lose the will to move and stood there, frozen, until the bullets found them. The beach itself was about 40 yards of open sand between the waterline and the seawall. No cover, no concealment, just flat, open killing ground. Bodies littered the sand. Wounded men were crying for medics, but the medics were pinned down or dead. Equipment was scattered everywhere. Rifles, packs, helmets, all abandoned by men who'd never made it past the water's edge. I was still in ankle-deep water when something hit me hard in the back and knocked me face first into the sand. For a second I thought I'd been shot. Then I realized it was another soldier who'd fallen on top of me. He was dead, a massive wound in his back. His weight pinned me down. I was trying to crawl out from under him when a machine gun burst tore up the sand right where my head had been a second before. The dead man's body had saved my life. I shoved him off, scrambled to my feet, and ran. Not toward the seawall, not toward any tactical objective. Just ran like a terrified animal looking for any hole to hide in. My legs felt like they were moving through mud. The sand was soft and my boots kept sinking. Every step was agony. My shoulder was burning where I'd been grazed, and I could feel blood running down my arm inside my jacket. There was a crater about 15 yards ahead, probably from a naval shell that had fallen short. 3 or 4 men were huddled in it. I dove for it, landed hard on my stomach and slid into the hole. The men already there barely looked at me. They were in shock, covered in sand and blood, some of it theirs, some of it from other people. One kid, couldn't have been more than 18, was rocking back and forth holding his rifle and muttering the Lord's Prayer over and over. I checked myself for wounds. My shoulder was bleeding, but it was just a graze, nothing serious. My right leg had a cut on it from something, maybe shrapnel, but I could still move it. I still had my rifle. I'd lost my pack somewhere in the water, but I had the bandoliers across my chest. I did a quick count. 48 rounds, 4 grenades. That was all I had left. The crater was maybe 6 feet across and 3 feet deep. It gave us cover from the direct fire, but the mortars were still falling. I could hear them coming, that distinctive whistle, and then the crump of the explosion. They were walking the mortar fire up and down the beach, trying to hit the clusters of men pinned down in whatever cover they could find. One of the men in the crater with me was a corporal from Company B. I didn't know his name, but I recognized the unit patch. He was looking over the lip of the crater toward the seawall. "We gotta move," he said. His voice was shaking. "We stay here. We die here. Mortars got our range." He was right. The seawall was maybe 60 yards away. There were gaps in it, places where the concrete had crumbled or where there were drainage cuts. I could see other men pressed up against it, trying to use it for cover. Some were returning fire, but most were just trying to survive. Another mortar round hit close enough that dirt rained down on us. The kid with the rifle stopped praying and started screaming, high-pitched, wordless screaming. The corporal grabbed him by the collar. "Shut up, shut the hell up." But the kid wouldn't stop. The corporal slapped him hard across the face. The screaming cut off. The kid looked at him with empty eyes and then just lay down in the bottom of the crater and curled into a ball. "On 3, the corporal said. "We run for the wall. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just run." He looked at each of us. 1, 2, 3. He went over the lip and started running. I went right after him. So did one other man from our crater. The 4th man, the kid, stayed where he was. I never saw him again. I like to think he made it out later, but I doubt it. The mortars kept falling on that crater all morning. Running across that beach was the longest 60 yards of my life. The sand pulled at my boots. My lungs were burning. The weight of my gear felt like it was crushing me. Bullets kicked up sand all around us. I saw the corporal stumble, catch himself, keep going. The man behind me suddenly wasn't there anymore. I didn't look back to see what happened to him. I made it to the seawall and threw myself against it. The corporal was already there, pressed flat against the concrete. We were both gasping for breath. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my rifle. I looked down the wall. There were maybe 20 or 30 men strung out along this section, all of them pinned down, all of them in various states of shock or injury. That's when I saw the other two men from my boat, John Clifford and Harold Baumgarten. They were about 30 feet down the wall to my left. Clifford had a head wound, blood running down his face from under his helmet. Baumgarten looked okay physically, but his eyes had that 1,000-yard stare I'd learned to recognize in the months ahead. Out of 32 men who'd been on Boat 5, we were the only 3 I could see who'd made it this far. The Seawall gave us cover from the beach-level machine guns, but the Germans in the bluffs above could still hit us with mortars and grenades, and there was no way forward. The bluffs rose up sheer above us. The only way off the beach was through the draws, the valleys cut into the bluffs, but those were covered by the heaviest concentrations of German fire. The one we were supposed to take, D1, was a death trap. I could see it about 50 yards to our right, a narrow cut in the bluffs with concrete fortifications on both sides. The bodies stacked up there were 3 deep. Time became meaningless. We might have been pinned there for 20 minutes or 2 hours. I honestly couldn't tell you. The sun was up, burning down on us. The smell was overwhelming. Cordite, blood, seawater, vomit, burning fuel. Men were crying out for medics all up and down the beach. Some of the cries got weaker and then stopped. Others kept going, delirious, calling for their mothers. The corporal who'd run with me was named Jenkins. He told me his name while we were pressed against that wall, like it was important that someone know who he was in case he didn't make it. He was from Baltimore. Had a wife and a baby daughter he'd never met. She'd been born 2 months before we shipped out. He showed me a picture from his wallet. It was soaked with seawater and blood, but you could still make out a woman's face, smiling at the camera. An officer came running down the line, a captain, I think, though I couldn't see his rank insignia clearly. He was yelling at men to move, to get off the beach, to push forward. Some colonel named Canham had apparently gotten through on the radio and was ordering everyone to get moving or die where they sat. The captain grabbed men and physically pushed them up and over the seawall toward the bluffs. I watched several of them get cut down immediately. The Germans had the approaches covered perfectly, but a few made it to the base of the bluffs where there was a little dead ground, a small area the German guns couldn't depress enough to hit. Once there, they started working their way up using whatever cover they could find. Jenkins looked at me. "We go together," he said. "On 3 over the wall, run for the bluffs. Stay low, zigzag if you can. Ready?" I wasn't ready. I'd never be ready. But I nodded anyway because what else was I going to do? Stay there and wait for a mortar to land on my head? 1, Jenkins counted. I shifted my weight, got my boots under me. 2. I gripped my rifle so hard my knuckles went white. 3. We went over the wall together. Immediately the machine gun fire started tracking toward us. I ran in a crouch, angling right, trying to make myself as small a target as possible. The sand was chewed up by bullets and shell craters. I jumped over bodies, skirted around obstacles, focused on nothing but the base of those bluffs ahead. Jenkins went down about halfway there. I saw him stumble and fall, and I wanted to stop, wanted to help him, but I knew if I stopped I was dead. I kept running, made it to the bluffs and threw myself into the dead ground, where 8 or 9 other men were already huddled. Only when I was there, gasping for breath, did I look back. Jenkins was still out there. He was crawling, dragging himself forward with his arms. I could see the blood trail behind him. A medic broke from cover to try to reach him. The medic made it maybe 10 feet before a sniper shot took him in the chest. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Jenkins stopped crawling. He lay there for a moment, and then he rolled onto his back and just looked up at the sky. I watched him die from 60 feet away, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. The dead ground at the base of the bluffs was maybe 20 feet wide. Beyond that, the hillside rose up at about a 45-degree angle, covered in thick grass and brush. The Germans had mined it heavily. I could see the little telltale signs, disturbed earth, tripwires, wooden stakes, and somewhere up there, well concealed, were the bunkers and machine gun nests that had been slaughtering us all morning. A sergeant I didn't recognize was organizing the men. He was working to clear a path through the mines using a Bangalore torpedo, a long pipe filled with explosives that you could push through wire obstacles and detonate. It was slow, dangerous work. Every few minutes someone would get hit by a sniper, or a mortar would land close and we'd all have to flatten ourselves and wait it out. I stayed in that dead ground for what felt like hours. The sun was high now, Had to be close to noon. The beach behind us was still taking fire, but reinforcements were coming in. I could see more boats hitting the shore, men pouring out, getting cut down or making it to the seawall. Tanks were trying to land, but most of them were drowning in the deep water or getting stuck in the soft sand. A few were burning, hit by German artillery. Slowly, painfully, we started to move up the bluff. The Bangalore had cleared a narrow path through the mines. We moved single file, crawling on our bellies, using every bit of cover we could find. The grass was tall enough to hide in, but you had to stay low. I saw a man raise his head to look around, and a sniper bullet went through his helmet. He dropped without a sound. About 40 feet up the bluff, I found a shell crater big enough for 2 men. I slid into it and came face to face with a German soldier. He was dead, had been for hours by the look of him. One of the Navy shells must have scored a direct hit on his position. His uniform was Wehrmacht, probably 352nd Infantry Division. He looked young, maybe younger than me. I had never seen a dead German before. In training, they'd always been the enemy, faceless, nameless. But this kid looked like he could have been from Bedford. Same scared expression frozen on his face. I stayed in that crater for a while, catching my breath, trying to think. The sounds of battle were all around me. Rifle fire, machine guns, explosions, men yelling in English and German. Somewhere up ahead I could hear someone screaming in pain. Long drawn-out screams that went on until they suddenly stopped. The climb up that bluff took the rest of the afternoon. We moved from crater to crater, cover to cover, sometimes crawling on our bellies, sometimes running in short bursts between positions. The Germans were fighting hard, but they were also taking casualties from our naval gunfire and the few tanks that had made it off the beach. Their positions were being pounded by destroyers that had come in close to shore, firing almost point blank at the bunkers. I killed my first German on that hillside. He came around a corner in the trench system, an MP-40 submachine gun in his hands. We saw each other at the same time. I fired first. 3 shots from my M1, the first one missed. The second caught him in the shoulder and spun him around. The third hit him in the back as he was falling. He went down face first and didn't move. I stood there staring at him for I don't know how long. Then I threw up, got it all over my boots and the trench wall. Nobody said anything. A couple guys just patted me on the back and we kept moving. By late afternoon we'd taken the first line of German positions. The bunkers were concrete and steel, resistant to everything but direct hits from heavy naval guns. Inside them were the machine guns, the mortars, the ammunition that had killed so many of us on the beach below. The Germans who'd manned them were dead or had retreated inland. We found one bunker with 4 dead Germans inside, killed by a satchel charge someone had thrown through the firing slit. I made it to the top of the bluff just before sunset. From up there I could see the whole beach. It was covered with bodies and equipment. Thousands of men had landed on Omaha that day. I don't know how many died. Too many. Way too many. The tide was coming in, and I could see the waves washing over bodies that lay at the waterline. Some of them were men I'd known. That night we dug in about 500 yards inland. There were maybe 40 of us from various units, all mixed together. Company A 116th Infantry had effectively ceased to exist as a fighting unit. Out of about 200 men, maybe 30 were still combat effective. The rest were dead, wounded, missing, or in shock so bad they couldn't function. Bedford, Virginia, population 3,000, had lost 19 boys in one day. That little town paid a higher price than almost anywhere else in America. I found Clifford and Baumgarten that night. We sat together in a foxhole, not talking, just being near someone from home. Clifford's head wound had stopped bleeding. Baumgarten had gotten a Purple Heart's worth of shrapnel in his left leg, but he could still walk. 3 of us out of 32. We didn't talk about the others. Couldn't, not then. Maybe not ever. The next morning they reorganized us into provisional units and we started moving inland. The beachhead was secure. We'd paid for it in blood, but we'd taken it. The invasion was successful. That's what the officers told us. We'd done our job. We were heroes. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a fraud. I'd survived when better men than me had died. Roy Stevens, who'd saved my ass in a football game once. Raymond Hoback, whose mother made the best apple pie in Bedford County. Sergeant Wilkes, who'd taught me how to clean a rifle. All dead, and I was alive. Why? What made me deserve to live when they didn't? That question followed me through France, through Belgium, through Germany. I fought all the way to the Elbe River, saw a lot more combat, lost a lot more friends, but nothing ever came close to those first 30 minutes on Omaha Beach. Nothing in war ever does. Your first combat is the one that marks you forever. I came home in late 45, got discharged in early 46, went back to Bedford, tried to pick up where I'd left off, but everything was different. The town was different. Or maybe I was different. Either way, I couldn't make it fit anymore. I'd go to the drugstore and see Mr. Reynolds behind the counter, and I'd remember his son dying in the water next to me. I'd walk past the football field and think about Roy Stevens. Every street corner, every familiar face reminded me of someone who wasn't coming back. The nightmares started a few months after I got home. Always the same dream. I'm back in the water trying to reach the beach, but I can't move fast enough. The machine gun fire is cutting down everyone around me, and I'm screaming for them to get down to take cover, but they can't hear me. And then the water turns red, and I'm swimming through blood and bodies, and I wake up gasping, drenched in sweat. I moved away from Bedford in 47, went to North Carolina, got a job in a factory, met my wife there, told her I'd been in the war but never told her what I'd seen. She understood that there were places in my head I couldn't let her go, and she never pushed. We had 3 kids together, raised them right, gave them good lives. But there was always a part of me that was still on that beach, still 19 years old, still watching my friends die in the surf. I went back to Normandy once in 1984, 40th anniversary of D-Day. The beach is beautiful now, peaceful. There's a monument, a museum, a carefully maintained cemetery where thousands of American boys are buried. They've got the beach mapped out, markers showing where each unit landed, plaques explaining what happened. Tourists walk around taking pictures, kids run on the sand, families have picnics. I stood at the waterline where Boat 5 had been and tried to remember exactly where Raymond had fallen. Couldn't do it. 40 years and thousands of tides had erased everything. The bunkers are still there, preserved as memorials, but they've been cleaned up, made safe for visitors. I walked up to the bluffs using a nice paved path. Took me about 10 minutes. On June 6th, 44, it took 6 hours and cost hundreds of lives. In the cemetery, I found some of the boys from Bedford, Roy Stevens, Raymond Hoback, John Reynolds, all buried in neat rows, white crosses marking their graves. I stood there for a long time, trying to find the words to explain why I was still alive and they weren't. Never found those words. Still haven't. Clifford died in 63. Heart attack. He was only 38 years old. Baumgarten made it to 91, died just a few years back. That makes me the last one. The last man from Boat 5. The last one who remembers exactly what it was like in those first minutes when the ramp dropped and the ocean turned red. People ask me sometimes what D-Day was like. Young people, historians, reporters, they want to know about the heroism, the sacrifice, the triumph of good over evil. They want me to tell them it was worth it, that we saved the world, that our friends died for something meaningful and important. And I tell them yes, because that's what they need to hear, and maybe it's even true. We did stop Hitler. We did liberate Europe. The men who died on that beach did not die in vain. But late at night, when I can't sleep and I'm sitting in the dark remembering, I don't think about the big picture. I think about Roy's face when the bullet hit him, the way he just disappeared under the water without a sound. I think about Raymond trying to get his burning pack off, the look in his eyes when he knew he was hit. I think about Sergeant Wilkes, who was going to buy a farm when the war was over and raise cattle. I think about all of them, 32 boys from a small Virginia town who got on a boat together and only 3 came off. They haunt me, every single one of them. Not in a scary way. They're just there, always in the back of my mind, reminding me that I'm living on borrowed time. Every year past 19 is a gift they never got. Every birthday, every Christmas, every quiet morning drinking coffee and watching the sunrise, that's something they'll never experience. And I carry that weight every day. The worst part is forgetting. Not forgetting they died, but forgetting the little things about them. What Raymond's voice sounded like, the way Roy laughed, the smell of Sergeant Wilkes' pipe tobacco. Those details fade over time, and every time I lose another one, it feels like I'm killing them all over again. Like if I can't remember them perfectly, they never really existed. My grandkids don't understand why I won't talk about the war. They see the medals in the box in my closet, and they think it must have been glorious. They play their video games where you respawn after you die, and they think war is an adventure. I can't explain to them what it's really like. Can't make them understand that war isn't about glory or honor or any of that bullshit. War is about terrified teenagers drowning under the weight of their own equipment while machine guns tear them apart. War is about watching your best friend bleed out in the sand while you run away to save your own skin. War is about living with the guilt of survival for the rest of your miserable life. I'm 79 years old, and I've lived a good life, better than I deserved. But I'm tired. Tired of carrying this weight, tired of the nightmares, tired of wondering why I survived when better men didn't. Part of me is still on that beach, still 19 years old, still trying to make it to the seawall while bullets kick up sand around me and the water runs red with the blood of boys from Bedford. When I die, and it won't be long now, I want to be cremated, and I want my ashes scattered on Omaha Beach. Let the tide take me back out where I left my friends 60 years ago. Maybe then I can finally rest. Maybe then I can stop seeing their faces every time I close my eyes. Maybe then I can forgive myself for living when they died. But I doubt it. Some wounds don't heal, some ghosts don't fade, some debts can never be repaid. I've spent 60 years trying to be worthy of the sacrifice those boys made on June 6, 1944, and I've failed every single day. Because nothing I do, no life I live, no good I bring into the world will ever balance the scales. They gave everything and I gave nothing. I just got lucky. That's the truth about Omaha Beach. That's what they don't tell you in the history books or the movies. It wasn't about courage or heroism or any grand purpose. It was about chaos and terror and random chance. The machine gun that killed the man next to you but missed you by inches. The mortar round that landed 10 feet to the left instead of right on top of you. The German who hesitated for half a second before pulling the trigger, giving you time to drop behind cover. That's what survival came down to. Luck. Pure dumb luck. And I've been paying for that luck ever since. Every birthday is a reminder that I'm older than Roy Stevens will ever be. Every Christmas with my family is a reminder that Raymond Hoback never met his nieces and nephews. Every quiet evening is a reminder that Sergeant Wilkes never got to buy that farm and watch the sun set over his own land. So when people thank me for my service, when they shake my hand and call me a hero, I smile and nod and say the right things. But inside, I'm thinking about those boys who never made it off the beach. They're the heroes, they paid the price. I'm just the guy who lived to tell about it. And some days that feels less like a blessing and more like a punishment. The ocean still calls to me sometimes in my dreams. I'm back in the water, weighted down with gear, struggling toward a beach I can never quite reach. The waves are red, and the sound of machine guns never stops, and somewhere in the distance I can hear Roy and Raymond and all the others calling my name. And I wake up in my quiet house, safe and warm and alive, and I feel more guilty than I did the day it happened. That's my story. That's what it was like when the first wave hit Omaha Beach. 3 of us made it past the seawall alive. Just 3. And sometimes late at night when the memories come flooding back and I can still taste the salt water and smell the cordite and feel the sand under my boots, I wish it had been 2.